the beginning of time, exotic dancers have provided man with harmless and fulfilling fantasy. But as we reach the end of the millennium, is this historical form of expression in jeopardy? Here in Southern California, one councilwoman is proposing legislation that threatens every gentleman's club. If passed, men would be denied their right to life, liberty, and a lap dance.
What these laws are trying to do is merely to put these places out of business. That's it. Clear and simple.
Like I said, I would say we're out of business. That's it. It's just another way of shutting us down.
So what exactly has these men so riled up? This woman, Councilwoman Cindy Misikowski, and her destructive two-part plan. Rule number 1, no customer is allowed to tip a stripper. Period. End of story.
That's going to put me out of this business.
Eiling Logan is one of thousands of exotic dancers whose lives would be stripped down to nothing if this legislation passed.
I chose this. I enjoy it. And she has no business telling me I can't do it how I want to do it.
But what about part 2? A lap dance must be performed at least 10 feet away from any customer.
If anybody ever goes to the opera, ballet, or theater, where do you want to sit? You want to sit front row center. Those seats cost a lot more, and there's a reason for that.
But does that same idea apply to a lap dance? The Manvakit ran a scientific test to find out. Here's a typical lap dance. Up close and personal, full of fantasy and enjoyment. But Councilwoman Misikowski wants the dancer to back 10 feet away. What was once intimate and fulfilling becomes cold and distant, not to mention nearly impossible to see. The distraught customer is left with only one option: get up and go home.
It's frustrating because our vision is a very important sense, and you get frustrated when you can't see something that you want to see clearly.
Dr. Kagan is a Los Angeles-based ophthalmologist. He knows how hard it is for people to see in normal circumstances, let alone the dim, moody light of a typical gentleman's club.
Certainly at 10 feet, we require good distance vision. And when you are exposed to low levels of illumination, you become more nearsighted in low levels of illumination and in low light situations.
How many people in America suffer from nearsightedness?
It has to be in the millions. It has to be over 100 million people have this condition.
Aside from the discrimination against 100 million visually handicapped Americans, who else would suffer? If these new laws passed, who are the real victims?
The citizens, the people who come in, the patrons, they have their own First Amendment right.
There's no question whatsoever that men have a constitutional right to be able to see erotic entertainment, and that includes lap dancing.
I'd like you to meet John Doe, a strip club junkie. He's agreed to speak with the Manvakit, and we've agreed to conceal his identity. What is it about being in a strip club that makes you feel like a man?
The camaraderie. The way the girls treat you. It's not like going out to a bar where you're actually trying to hit on somebody and you can get rejected. In a strip club, you're on the same level. You're there for one reason and they're there for one reason. There's no pretension.
How much of your paycheck would you say ends up in a stripper's thong?
I'd probably say somewhere around 50%.
Obviously, John and countless others have a lot at stake here. So I went down to City Hall and waited patiently. Thus far, repeated attempts to interview Councilwoman Misikowski have been denied. I did, however, catch up with Herlinda Chico, a feminist who has her own unique views about men and women.
It's so disgusting to see a woman being a slave to a man.
Because you've decided this is inappropriate. Women will be out of work.
There are other jobs. There's so many jobs out there, jobs that women can use their mind with.
What's the harm in a lap dance, exactly, when you're in that scenario?
It was almost as if you were dangling a treat in front of a dog to get them to beg or perform. And that's what they were doing with dollar bills, and that's what the women were doing. They were performing for men.
But
It was pretty degrading.
dogs do like treats, though.
Still degrading.
This issue is too important. I have to speak with Councilwoman Misikowski, but I've been waiting for days. Then, just as our crew was ready to pack up and leave. I was wondering tell me about your reasoning behind the legislating lap dancing.
We believe that it needs to be investigated and explored in terms of the conditions and appropriate control.
We don't know whether this woman is doing this for solely political purposes, whether she has some type of religious agenda.
All we're asking is let's explore it, let's look at it.
We will sit down with them at any time, any place to discuss these issues.
Why are you being so evasive in terms of addressing this publicly?
Saying publicly we need to have hearings and process and reviewing it, and that's what I've explored.
They won't engage in debate. They won't engage in dialogue.
Isn't this just another example of feminists trying to stop men?
If you could say one thing to Councilwoman Misikowski, what would it be?
Fight a good fight. Fight a fight for something that's worth fighting for. And don't bother harmless people like us.
Now you're intruding into people's bedrooms and in people's minds. Stay out.
We made a decision in 1776 that we're going to choose freedom over tyranny.
I think she's wonderful. I think that she's doing a very good deed for the city of Los Angeles.
Maybe she just needs to go and get laid.
There's no crime being committed here. We'll be the only victims.
And victims they are. Victims of fear, unemployment, from one woman's crusade. But fear not, fair men, because the manvocate won't rest until all men are safe.
Can you imagine a world without strip clubs?
Not at all. Hell on earth.